Coogs house. We've gotten really good at cutting down nets.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Cougars After Dark, the live edition of Locked On Cougs. I'm your host, Parker Ainsworth, here bringing the latest on Cougs each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first, or in this case, maybe your last listen of the day. Locked On Cougs is proudly brought to you by Amazon Fire and Fire TV. More on that later, but thank you to the folks there for that. If you found us on YouTube and we're live, thank you. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 2,500 because we're at just about 2075 almost, and we're looking to get there to the 2,500 mark to give something away. So subscribe, help us get there, like and comment videos. Let us know you are in that contest. If you're looking for something to say, just are too dumb but you don't know what to do, tell us what you think about this fact. In 2024, the Houston Cougar basketball team held Kansas to 46 points on March 9th. In 2022, the Houston Cougar football team allowed 48 points to the Kansas football team. Less points in basketball on Saturday than in football just 18 months or so ago. All right, so I want to break down some things for this game. I want to talk some about this game. This game was unbelievable to watch. I didn't really believe what was happening. And so I want to talk some of the first segment about being Big 12 champs outright. The Houston Cougars are outright Big 12 champions. In the second segment, I want to talk some about big differences. More on that in a minute. And the third and final segment, I want to talk some about RC32, the patch they had on Andy toughness that brings. We got a comment already from Jordan. Jordan says, go, and I can't stress this enough. Cougs. Agreed. Jordan, thank you for joining us live. Now, in the first segment, I said I want to talk about being the Big 12 champs. I should point out that Houston was technically the outright Big 12 champion before tip-off. Iowa State lost to Kansas State, meaning they were out of any potential tiebreaker. The tiebreaker actually would have been fairly important because if Kansas State had lost, so Iowa State had won, and Houston had not somehow beaten the tar out of Kansas, then the tiebreaker actually comes down to who has the best record amongst the top three. Out of those, because they had to split 1-1 anyway. Long story short, it would have relied on Baylor to then win in their game against Texas Tech. Now, that's because Houston beat Baylor and Tech had Houston beat Baylor and Iowa State had not. And then if it had been Kansas in the third spot, which they would have been had they won, it would have been 0-2 on our side versus the third seed, and Iowa State beat them. And anyway, long story short, none of that matters because Iowa State blew it and lost to Kansas State. Did get confirmed after the game. It sounds like Kansas State, Iowa State was not on any of the televisions around any of the players or coaches. It sounds like Hollis Price broke the news to Kelvin Sampson what might have been after the game. They were walking through the tunnel, it sounded like, and he'd broken that news to Kelvin after the game. And Kelvin did not know, or at least was able to play like he did not know. I think that they showed on to the fans in the stadium. It'd be hard to have ignored that completely. In this game, Houston looked like the champion we know them to be. Houston won 76-46, and I would almost argue it didn't even actually feel that close, the 30 points that difference allows. Houston entered the game in a different gear. I think the most notable play on that to me was there was a early possession in which Jamal Shead got a fast break, and he is even with Kansas, multiple defenders in the Kansas fast break, and he visibly bends his body and just kicks it into the next gear, attacks the rim, takes some contact at the rim, gets by a couple guys, but takes some contact at the rim, missed the layup, ball's rebounding, passing around. The way he steals the ball, I've never really seen an explanation for, but he splits two Kansas Jayhawks, gets the ball with his left hand and pops it down and pops it back up with his right to avoid the third before he dribbles out for a second, lets the offense reset, and whips it to Damian Dunn for three. They were just in a different gear all night long. Houston opened up this game 34-9. It like at no point in this game did it ever feel like Kansas was going to have a shot. And that's what champions do. When champions have a chance to take down and win a title, that's what they do. And that's what Houston did. Now, because of the route, I mean, the route of Kansas, minutes got kind of dispersed relatively evenly. I mean, Jamal Shead, I think, finished with 37 minutes, but outside of that, LJ Cryer just 27. Emanuel Sharp didn't technically start. Ryan Elvin started on senior day, but Emanuel played about 30. Javier Francis, the foul trouble, only played 10 minutes, right? This was not the kind of game you saw necessarily like a bunch of hard-fought minutes from a bunch of guys. Malik Wilson played 20. Damian Dunn played 18. Said Lott, more on that in a second, played 18 as well. Just a kind of well spread out game outside of Shead and Roberts, because those two guys you kind of have on the floor the whole time. It's all senior night, the last night in Fertitta, potentially. They do have COVID years. They want to come back. On the Kansas side, they couldn't figure out anything going. Their best offense the first half was KJ Adams, who I do love. Y'all know that. Y'all know me. Y'all know I love KJ. Their best offense was getting him the ball and letting him shoot free throws. He was 4-4 from the free throw line on the to start the day. He ended up 5 of 8. He's a 60% free throw shooter, so that tracks. But their best offense, again, when it was 34-9, he had 6 points. Right? I mean, that's what they had going. Kansas defensively didn't seem to have any idea what kind of speed Houston was playing with. Houston had a bunch of points off of turnovers, and Kansas could not keep up in transition. Houston offensively did not know what hit him. It looked like they were playing 5-on-7. Houston was at the ball, potentially with 2 every single time Kansas tried to catch it. And what's interesting is the quotes that have come out of this after the game. I want to read a longer one from Kelvin Sampson. He said, "For us, it was never that about the Big 12. That was somebody else's narrative. I mean, for our kids and our program, the way we do things is just to compartmentalize. When I heard it was the Big 12, I said, okay, we're playing the Big 12. You're right. I wanted to wait till the schedule came out so I could see who we played first. Then when the schedule came out and we saw who we played first, I said, okay, here's the way we would prepare for anybody we play. We didn't change anything. We didn't do anything different. We believe in what we do. Jamal Shead was the point guard when we beat the Big Ten champ Illinois, when we beat the Pac-12 champ Arizona. It's almost like people thought that the only schools we played were American. If you notice, you don't get to the Final Four of the Elite Eight at Sweet 16 without beating other really, really good teams. The only difference was playing them every night, but they had to play us too. We're part of the rotation, our DNA, our pedigree." Kelvin Sampson admitted right there that like they opened Big 12 play, looked at every team they played the same as they've always looked at teams they play. And frankly, there were moments this year where this Big 12 conference, the gauntlet that it was, Houston made them look like they were a bunch of American teams. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, Houston dominated this conference from start to finish in that way. Houston did not lose a home game. Houston lost just 3 of their 9 road games. Houston lost 2 of those 3 road games by a combined 5 points. Houston had an average margin of victory of about 10.5 points. The next closest was Iowa State at just under 4. Houston dominated this thing. It wasn't close. Houston was the best team in the best conference in America from start, more or less, to finish, and did it in a commanding, dominating fashion. I cannot stress enough, and we'll have more analytics, I'm sure, when I have more time to look them up to break all those things down. But one last quote from Sampson here said, "This is a damn good school. We live in a damn good city, and we're a damn good basketball program. And we should never, ever, ever think that we should take a backseat to anybody." And I think that's the mentality that he's approached this entire rebuild, this entire venture, ever since he stepped foot in Hoffheinz back in the day. That's the way he's approached this gig and this job. And he's right. The history of the basketball program extends a long way back to the Big E, right? Back to Cheney, right? I mean, this goes all the way back. It's not just the 3 years of Five Slam and Jamma, right? There's a lot of history at this program and city, and he is harping on that and bringing that and presenting that in a way that it's easy to be proud of, especially with the way they fight, right? The way they play through these kinds of things. Lots more to say on the Big 12 champs. I understand there's a conference tournament next week, And I think I've already seen Kansas folks talking about this and the other thing, although I would point out it looks like Dickinson won't play in the conference tournament, and it looks like McCullers might also sit it for them. I bet they're also punting on the tournament. I would, from a fan perspective, not be horribly offended if Houston lost the first round of the conference tournament and just rested for the NCAA tournament. But I also would not mind winning the whole thing. And I don't, we'll talk more about that in the coming days and weeks. But I will say winning the conference outright in the regular season is far more significant to me, far more difficult to do, far more indicative of who the best team in the conference is. And I don't just say that because Houston did it. I say that because, frankly, it takes months of effort to win the conference outright. I mean, we're talking here on March 9th. They played West Virginia at the start of the new year, right? I mean, that's how long this thing goes. The conference tournament for Houston's going to be 3 days. You have a bad shooting one of those 3 days, and boof, the whole thing's gone, right? And I understand basketball's more complicated than that. Houston finds ways to win when they shoot poorly. I'm not saying it is necessarily win, shoot well or go home or whatever, right? But I do think it's worth pointing out that whatever happens in that week, Houston has shown they're the best team in this conference, the best team in America. And a lot of people are starting to think, well, what's going on with the Big 12 this year? It's not the big. If other, high dollar programs, teams that have made a lot more money in the last 30 years in sports, that team in Austin, maybe even that team in Waco, that team in Norman, maybe even that team that Houston just beat the brakes off of, if they had Houston's resume, no one would be questioning the Big 12. And with Houston having it right now, there's some people talking about like, oh, the ACC, and look at them. Oh, look at the SEC has 4 teams tied for second. At bogus. It's the same conference. Houston just dominated it. I don't need to hear anything else about it, right? And I want to talk more about how they did that and the personnel moves they did that with in the second segment. But first, I want to talk about our newest buddies over at Amazon Fire, because Fire TV is here to be your destination for all sports and live games and highlights and in-depth analysis like Locked On. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as Fire Stick TV that you can plug into your existing TV and provide all the same kind of millions of movies and TV episodes as free and live TV and all those kinds of things, just like if you had the smart TV. Just got to plug in the Fire Stick. Whether it's baseball opening weekend or college basketball tournament very, very soon, or whatever you want to watch, you're going to want to watch on Fire TV, because Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels that deliver a constant supply of videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And yes, that's what I'm talking about. That includes Locked On and most big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, whether it's March Madness, the NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this to learn more. If it's at Amazon.com/LockedOn Fire TV. All right, now, I still think Jamal Shead is the MVP of the game, because Jamal Shead's probably the MVP of every game he's played in, maybe at least this season. I don't know how many ones you want to count last year with Marcus on the roster and things like that. The year before when Marcus was hurt, obviously Jamal would have had a lot of those as well. Jamal finished with 13 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. But when I look at this game, I think the thing that sticks out to me, honestly, is the way the bigs played. Jayan Roberts played 32 minutes with the knee's been draining every 2 weeks and 7 stitches in his hand. He did that against a team that lines up with 3 dudes in their starting lineup, 6'8" or taller. Jayan Roberts is listed at 6'7" and change. And he did it in a way that he looked like the best forward on the floor. Jayan Roberts finished with just 10 points. I understand they say just, but 8 rebounds and a pair of assists. He had a steal and 2 blocks. He seemed to be always commanding things, though. They found him in the block several times for skip passes. He was barking out the calls from the back line of the defense. He was always in charge of what was happening in this game. Roberts played like a champion. I don't mean to be Notre Dame. I should probably say something else. He played every way a champion should play in this game and looked like a champion at all moments of this game. I was so happy that I got to hear from him in the post-game comments, which are now, I believe, at this point in the night, they're posted on the Houston Athletics YouTube page. Shouts to Jeff Conrad for seeing those things out every time. But Roberts was just, When asked after the game about what this felt like, he said, new conference, but we've done this before, right? Like Roberts is a champion. It doesn't matter what room he walks into, what boardroom, what locker room, he's a champion. And when he walks on the floor, he walks and plays like a champion. There's championship toughness to everything he does, right? I could talk about a lot about Jayan Roberts, and hopefully get to talk about him for another year of Houston Cougars basketball. He has that COVID year as well, but we'll see. The younger bigs, though, I thought Javier Francis, in just 10 minutes, he had 4 big-time dunks, and I loved after the steal and dunk one he had, which I've never seen him move that quickly. I loved how he turned and stared at Dickinson and was chirping. Obviously, watching on TV, I don't know what he said, but he was letting Hunter Dickinson know something about the fact that he was eating his lunch. Now, foul trouble meant that Francis played just 10 minutes, but 8 points in those 10 minutes, a pair of steals, pretty impactful 10 minutes as well, especially when you factor in that, he's covering the best player on the other team when he's out there, right? Francis dominated the floor while he's on the floor. He just committed too many fouls, which led to my I got to be right moment of the day. Said lot, ladies and gentlemen. Said lot. Yeah, give him a hand. Yeah, give him a hand. Said lot. We're teaching my 9-month-old how to clap. We tried to do said lot today, but Said played 18 minutes. Said had 0 points. Said had a steal and a block and 3 fouls. I'm telling you right now, Houston wins that game by 30 with Said lot, and I don't know that they win that game without him, right? Said came in and did exactly what I thought he was going to do, in that when it was his turn to do it, he was physical. He was explosive. He was such a good athlete at 270 pounds that Dickinson didn't know what to do. No, Said is listed at 6'9". If you told me it was 6'10", I'd believe you. But he's an Ivory Coast kid that hadn't played basketball for a whole lot of years, right? It's just not as big a sport in other countries as it is here, right? Said has picked the game up quickly. Credit to Kelvin and the guys for teaching him as well. But on top of all that, again, he played a couple years before he got here. I mean to say that he just started playing when he got here last Christmas or anything with that stretch. But Said is playing at a very high level. And he comes out there and he's playing against the best player, preseason best player in America, all the awards that Dickinson has won, when he was at Michigan, and his preseason, all the things at Kansas this year. And Said a lot ate his lunch. Dickinson had 11 points. He played just 23 minutes because he got hurt, right? But he was able to keep up with him on the perimeter. He only let up shoot 1 3, and yes, he made it, but he was able to keep up with him out there. Every time Dickinson tried to drive, he ran straight into Sedlot's chest, and that's a big chest to run into, folks. There was nowhere for him to go. Said was everywhere at all times, keeping him out of the paint, keeping him flustered, keeping him frustrated. He couldn't see around him to get his pass. Hunter Dickinson in the first game diced Houston as a passer. In this game, he did not. And I think it's interesting that in the first game, Houston, at the time, Tug was obviously healthy, and Francis, 4 minutes in the game, fell on his hip. And I really hoped that what Francis said to Dickinson on Saturday was about, hey, I'm back now, right? But I digress. Functionally, his 10 minutes on Saturday, because of foul trouble, were not holistically that much different than he had a pretty good start to the game in his first 4 minutes in the game in Fog Allen, but he got hurt. And so then JoJo Tuger stepped in. Tugler's the youngest kid in the conference and a very different athlete than Said. He's got length, he's got explosiveness, he's got quickness, he's tough, but he's not Said big, right? And interesting difference there was Tugler kind of got taken advantage of, right? He didn't have the same kind of presence. Dickinson got the block, got to his spots, got to pass the ball around. Dickinson was really, really good in the first matchup. Said had a very different impact on him, and I don't know if it's just scouting report, not being ready, or not being into it, but Dickinson was not ready for it. And as JG points out here, Said is learning and progressing at an extremely fast rate. For now, it's exciting. Later, it might be scary. I think we got glimpses into the scary here, right? And that's not just me because JG timed it in there. That's a pretty well-timed comment, though. I do think we're getting glimpses into, wait a second, this is freshman Sedlot. What is junior Sedlot going to be like after a couple of years of working in the post work with Kelvin Sampson, his assistant coach that runs all the forward drills, right? What's it going to look like when he's been in the gym with Jayan Roberts for another offseason? Because Jayan's going to work out in the Houston gym regardless of what happens, right? What's it going to look like when he fights a JoJo Tuger and Jacob McFarland after he put on some weight in the offseason with Coach Bishop? What's that triumvirate going to look like? You have all different types of athletes. You got the finesse and skill of McFarland. You got the length and athleticism of JoJo. You got the size and strength of Said. Like, what's that going to be? I think the thing that Said brings that really made me think he could do this, and I'm excited to say this because I told you guys before the UCF game that Said needed to play in both these. Said appears to almost bounce as he runs. I don't want to call it a gazelle because that's like so cliche, but the way he runs, because he's so big, was just shocking to my eyes the first time I saw him do it early in the season in garbage time minutes, just going from one end of the floor to the other. I was like, guys that are 6'9", 265, and again, I think it's probably closer to 6'10", 270, guys that big are not to just naturally run with that much grace. That just doesn't normally happen, right? And Said's not a normal athlete. He's an incredible athlete. It takes incredible athleticism to do that. And Dickinson didn't know what to do with it, right? Now, KJ played his butt off at the other forward spot. He was trying to cover J1 and make up for Hunter and da-da-da-da-da-da. He finished with just 9 points. He had 6 of their first 9 points, Adams did, and finished with just 9 points. The star of the first show, Furphy, the small forward, who's listed at 6'9" and change, is the big Australian guy. He had 17 points the first matchup, had like some of the same looks in this one, and had just 9. Houston found ways to A, get Kansas to regress back to the means on shooting, and B, was able to out-physical and out-tough them from start to finish. This thing was never close. It was never going to be close. Fertitta was nuts. All good things there. Now, I want to talk some in the final segment about where some of the toughness I think this year has come from. Because this year's team was different. And I want to talk some about that in the final segment. But first, we have assembled here a championship caliber team. And if you're trying to put together a championship caliber team for your small business, you want to find quality professionals for the right role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just in the job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy. We have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so I mentioned this team played with the championship level toughness and championship level grit, and I really think that there were a lot of games on their schedule this year where Houston, honestly, was just the tougher team. And frankly, I would argue in their 3 losses, they still looked very tough. I mean, they were obviously the tougher team when they beat West Virginia by 34. They were obviously the tougher team when they outgutted it with A&M on a neutral site. They were obviously the tougher team against Dayton in the championship of that Charleston Classic tournament, right? They were obviously the tougher team when they beat UT Austin in their place in overtime, right? And frankly, what I would add to that is that against Iowa State, yes, they lost by 4 points total after a crazy turnaround from Milovic or whatever the guy's name. I don't mean that pejoratively. I can't remember how to pronounce his name correctly off the top of my tongue right now. I was not planning on saying his name. Lost by 4 points. They didn't look out toughed. If anything, in that game, starting out down by a crazy amount and then coming back to tie it up late showed toughness and resilience, right? CCU, they lost by 1 on a backdoor cut against 2-3 zone. They didn't look out toughed in that game. They looked like they ran out of time, right? Because after that, they had to get the ball at the floor and had a little bit of struggle getting the ball at the floor. That was controversial, but it wasn't a lack of toughness. And frankly, I would even look at the 13-point loss to Kansas in Fall Gallon and be like, you know what? you can maybe tell me they weren't ready for the fog in that one. Kansas is really good at home, blah, 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 blah. And I would say, or Kansas shot well above their averages at home, even relative to their home averages. And then when they got to play in Fertitta and showed the toughness and resilience to play the same team a second time, they beat those boys by 30 points. They beat them by 30 points, taking their foot off the gas. They beat them by 30 points while playing fan favorite Ryan Elvin, what might be a career high in minutes. And I don't just mean that because he started the game. Ryan came back in the game with about 4.5 minutes left to play. Like this game was a rout. There's never been a moment this season where I thought Houston visibly lacked toughness. They had championship toughness from start to finish. And I think it's because of that little patch on their jersey. Not the Jumpman logo, not the Big 12 logo, not the silver thing on the back of the neck that has the Final Fours or whatever they've been to, much like the Nike stuff does with championships at the NBA level. No other patch than the one they put on them this year says RC32. Now, Reggie Chaney passed away. It's been several months now. And I understand that he was not eligible to come back and play for this team. He's going to go overseas and play, actually. That's part of the sadness of that story. Chaney's mom has reportedly been around the team a lot lately. She was in Waco with them. She talked to the team before that game. The family met in Oklahoma because Reggie was from Tulsa. The family lived up there, right? And there's a very adorable picture I've saved in my phone that just because I like the caption of it, but of Jamal after his game winner in Oklahoma, standing there with Reggie's sister, right? And like the cool moment that is because they were one of only a handful of Cougar fans in the entire stadium, right? And she was again there on Saturday. And the mom and the family were. And Reggie was not eligible to play on this team. But Reggie's cultural impact on this program is visible. It's palpable. Everyone wants to play with that kind of passion. Reggie made an impact last year while averaging very few points and a handful of rebounds per game. And he was, frankly, the only real impact player you could argue was coming off the bench, right? I mean, Jarris started, J1 started the 5. Javier might get a couple minutes here or there. Terrence got minutes depending on what kind of system the opponent was playing. Emanuel would come in. If he hit a couple threes, he could stay. But really, the bench guy was Reg. And Reggie's toughness made him that guy. I mean, the same guy that was the starter guy on starting big man on the Final Four team, saying that played a significant role on the Elite 8 team. Reggie was that guy. And the guys know it. The guys still talk about it. You can see it in their faces when they're asked about it. I want to shout out to Chris Gardner. Chris, I like Chris's stuff a lot. He has a Houston Roundball review. In post-game scrums after the game, he asked Jamal and Jaywan what they thought about Reggie and his impact on this program. And I thought that there was a key quote from Jamal where he said, "Just happy we got the win with him on our chest," and is pointing at the patch. And he said, "This patch means a lot to us." I don't think he's just saying that there. I'd be interested to see, if they won the conference tournament or if they cut down nets in Phoenix or what have you. If the big things happened, what they do to honor Reggie's parents, his mom, because Reggie was not going to be on this team, and I don't mean to say that they are missing him in that aspect, but this culture they've been building, frankly, since the days of Galen, right, and Corey Davis and all those guys, right, the guys are always around, and the culture is there at all times because those guys are always around. I mean, there's a look up to factor. You come in, I mean, Jamal, it was brought up again by Chris, came in saying, "I'm going to be the next Galen Robinson," right? You've got Cordell coming in saying, "I'm going to be the next Jamal Shead." You got these kinds of things lining up. And Reggie was such a big part of that culture, the culture built on toughness. The culture built on doing the things that don't show up in a stat book, but that Houston cares about, right? The tips, the deflections, the hustle plays, the dives, all those kinds of things, right? I just feel like there is something special with this group because every time they look at their teammate, they look them in the eye, but that teammate also has the RC logo there on their chest. I think that's carrying some weight, and I think that's having an impact. And I hate that it has to be posthumously, right? Like, I wish that there was some way that you could have the logo on the chest while also having him still here. That would be the best of all the worlds. And I don't mean to say that this is an even trade, right? By any stretch. I hope that's not how this comes off. But I do think that it's an example of a lasting, forever impact that Chaney will have on this program, right? And I don't know how long they'll keep the logo on the chest. I don't know what they'll do in the locker room or in the stadium or whatever for Reggie wants to take the logo off the chest. I don't know that you can quite retire the number 32. They've kind of put in some requirements on who that could and couldn't be. I think Jamal might actually check the boxes, but that's not today's conversation. I just feel like there is something extra in the air because of that. And I don't know what that is. I don't know how to quantify what that is. I'm open to suggestions. But as Jeremy here says, RIP to Mr. Chaney. And I appreciated the questions. Shouts to Chris for asking them because I think it is something on the guys' minds a whole heck of a lot. We'll do more. I always watch the game a second time. That'll be my Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. And we'll talk more of a breakdown of what extra things went well, besides just the fact that I was right about said lot and the breakdown on Monday's episode. We'll start getting ready for the Big 12 Conference tournament on Tuesday. We'll do football news as it comes and goes. A lot of big-time football recruits at this game. Could get some commits in the near future. And we're breaking all those kinds of things down each and every day here at Locked on Cougs. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Cougars After Dark. I know Cougars After Dark, it probably sounds like it's supposed to always be at night. I wanted to go live after the game. If you follow me on Twitter/X at Painters512 on all your social media platforms, my 9-month-old is ill, ear infection, nothing too crazy, but it does mean he has a fever, so we've been dealing with that. And I just watched a basketball game for a couple hours, and so my wife was like, "Hey, I need some help." And I was like, "Okay, the basketball game's over. I can come help out now, right?" Now everyone's asleep. He's doing okay. But that meant that we needed to go right after the game. And honestly, I don't like to record my thoughts on a topic when I know other people are out there talking about it until I like to record before I go listen to them. So I wanted to hear Pod Slam and Jam. I wanted to go hear the Go Coug show. I want to go do those kind of things too, but I couldn't in good conscience do that until after I told you what I think about it, because I didn't want to have to shape what I got going on here. So we'll be talking about the Kansas game more on Monday and breaking down some X's and O's stuff. Again, Tuesday, getting ready for the Big 12, and on throughout next week. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Excited to get to talk to you tonight as a Big 12 champion. I guess we're all Big 12 champions right now, right? We all are. It's an us thing. Locked on Cougs is primary Locked on podcast. Is your team every day. Our number one Houston Cougars, number one team in America, number 1 team in the Big 12, outright Houston Cougars each and every day. Go Cougs.